Life is good. Life is sweet. Life is sour. But here is a beautiful grapefruit. And that's what I'm about to have this morning for my meal. And I was thinking how easy it is to seek, this wonderful path of aliveness and the beauty of all the sensory experiences of what nature provides. And then I can start thinking of, but where did this grapefruit come from? What's the ecological footprint of that grapefruit? I know they don't come from where I live. They've been shipped here. What actually is in there? What kind of fertilizers and pesticides did they put on that? I don't know about the workers and how safe their hands were when they grabbed this and carried it. And then the people that brought it here, how long it was sitting in conditions that might not be environmentally sound and humanly sound for health. So one of the problems about being alive humans is we're to be meaningful human beings, which is my philosophy. That's our reason for being here, and then contributing to the good of the all, the whole that we're connected to, which sustains us. But very quickly, you can see I can move from this beautiful experience of what I pay attention to is the aliveness of a beautiful grapefruit and what that's going to taste like and what I'm going to feel like having it. And then I can think of all the fear-based material, narratives, rhetoric, discourses, and inevitabilities that, we do live in a somewhat threatening, risky world. Well, we always have since all species were born. Yeah, all species were born. They all live in a risky world that's dangerous. So I'm going to be talking today about chasing the safe life is a life of fear. That's the argument. So let me start with a story that yesterday I was riding my bike and rainy kind of gray day here in the West Coast and the rainforest, which it is in wintertime. Anyway, I'm pushing my bike through this forest path, which I like to go through and come up the other side of the ravine. And it's just a block or two away from where I live. And all of a sudden heard there was kids and saw some colored mats on the ground that are padded. And I said, oh, this is like an outdoors forest school group, and there was about 10 of them. And there was about three adults that I could see. And, I'm just kind of watching in there, sliding down the escarpment of the mud, and just, I didn't really look carefully because there was a scene that was catching my eye. And it was a teacher, somewhat harried and distressed in voice and tone and body posture, standing on the path, not with where the kids were playing, but sort of standing back, supervising and surveying them all. And I thought, okay, well, so this is either a daycare or, primary school of some kind. And, here's this great event. But what I hear, and I'm focusing all my attention on, is the teacher, all that aliveness, right, going on. And then now watching for the fear of risk, the fear of danger, the fear-based, worldview that starts to capture the lens of what reality is supposed to be or is, and what we should even be striving for is the safe school or whatever it is. And I'm watching this teacher yelling at a kid, more or less, not violently or anything, but repeatedly calling their name, get down from there, da da. I didn't even look to the child. I'm so fascinated by what this teacher's doing, and that's me, right? I'm an educator, teacher, and I'm a teacher of teachers, and I'm a philosopher of education and teaching. I'm interested in been reading a lot on fear and learning sites lately in my research. So I notice her pick out her phone, and she says, "I'm going to phone your mom." She's talking to this particular kid that she just couldn't get their attention and or get them to stop what they're doing. And that happens. Is that the problem? Well, I'm not sure that's the problem. I think the problem is what is this teacher going to do, or adult supervisor going to do with this issue of how that child's engaging their learning. Oh, Is that a question here? Or, and again, I'm thinking of the distressed, harried adult trying to supervise and control the kids. Is it more about their behaviors, or is it more about their learning experience? And this is how they go through their learning experience. And maybe part of their learning experience is not paying attention to your rules, and you standing back, not getting actually involved with them, and not putting a physical presence of connection with them, but yelling across all this distance through the forest at them. Yeah, I think you got my scenario there. Not effective as far as I'm concerned, and what would be really an educative moment. So it turns out to be a squealing moment. And it's not the kid squealing, it's the teacher squealing. They're squealing on the kid, and they're warning him and threatening them in their subtle way. I'm going to call your mom if you don't. But she didn't even add if you don't. She just starts calling up on her dial phone. And of course, she knows the child's watching, more or less. What is she going to say to the parent on the phone? So I'm still moving my bike by, just watching this scene. And then I hear somebody question the teacher with the phone, what are you doing? And I can't tell if it was a child asked that, could have been, and or was another one of the staff. And I just heard her answer, because the question was, what's going on? And this hairy teacher with the phone, in the middle of dialing, just basically said something like, he's not being safe. And she repeated it 3 times. That's not safe. That's not safe. So as you can see, pretty much that's the story of us chasing this safety place, this safety imaginary. And there's a lot of research in education. And I started my research in graduate school, particularly in 1998. And immediately I was seeing in the educational literature these ideas about the safe school, the fear-free school zones, language like this, or math without fear textbooks, and about textbooks, but people were publishing this stuff, and there's obviously a huge market for how to be safe, how to be fear-free, even fearless, right? And all the language that goes with it. But as someone who specializes in fear research myself, and philosophy on theorizing on fear and fearlessness, I found this material coming out as to be very superficial, pithy, banal. I could say many things not so nice about it. And the intention being basically, it's a drive for this safe society, the safe, risk-averse culture, this risk-free culture society. There's so many critics of it, and there's so many huge, massive movement from parents to adults to teachers supporting this massive run, this illusory utopia to the safe and secure world. Well, one could take a lot of time to deconstruct what that box is all about. And yeah, it is a box that people think that they can build, or a bubble, as some authors have called it, how we create these anxiety buffer containers so that this teacher with those wild, alive kids, the grapefruit part of life, was more concerned with what that child's doing that's not safe. Now, if you really want to think about how that statement, what they're practicing, right? That's not safe. It's not safe. And when I heard it, I could hear the tone in that teacher answering the other person who asked. It shuts down the conversation immediately. Those 3 words. It's not safe. That's it. We know what to do. We go into our critical procedures, emergency management training here. 101 is just like poured into our minds. Like, where did they get that? Where did this teacher get that? So again, it's not a criticism of this teacher. They're doing an amazing work, no doubt, being with those kids and offering the great service that they do, not for all of us, not just the kids, but the rest of society. And sure, maybe it's a professional and they get paid, but the reality is that's amazing work they're doing. Like to go and wake up every morning and go and work with kids like that. It's like that's huge. Like that would is very hard on moi to be able to think of doing that. And many people. Mm. So this great gift of, you know, adults working with children is also this zone of, you know, a very troubling space. I've been reading a lot of John Dewey and a lot of Barbara Stengel's work and Adria English's work on the importance of disruption, the importance of not unsafety, but risk in learning and education and theory. So that goes with fear, right? Fear and learning and the educative process. So what kind of kids are we going to be raising? You know, as we've called them, the, you know, kids who lack, you know, outdoor experience, nature deficit disordered kids. We call them kids of anxiety. They're just huge, apparently. So much anxiety with young children and certainly teens. And then, you know, just the whole protective surveillance, helicopter parent kind of society. We've gone into this at least since the 90s, slightly before, but I've documented early 90s this really started. And again, when I was in graduate school, started pulling this apart and saying, yeah, I have all kinds of problems with this, the theorizing behind it. And what basically it sort of comes down to is that, you know, we fear who we are. We fear reality, and we've been taught to do so. That was a quote from my last video, if you want to check it out, on me talking about what's happened in education and taboo against knowing who we are. But where I'm actually going, and I'm going to wrap this video up fairly quickly here. It's easy to think if we just go out and find who's the problem for our insecurity, and we can easily blame, oh, that fear in this teacher comes from the fear of the culture. It comes from all our government leaders, the religious leaders, and radicals, or whoever are disturbing the world, and then making us all fearful, and the news media and health experts with the virus. We could go on and on of who's creating and building all this fear in us. Okay, fine. That's the reality. It's a social reality. And then there's us as just adults. So that's what I want to end on the video. When I finished my dissertation, I said there's basically two things, the problem with the whole world of education system, which is our socialization process fundamentally. And that is adultism and fearism. And I'm using fearism in the toxic sense of oppression, type of oppression like racism, sexism, classism, etc. And when fearism and adultism come together, adultism being that the adult has the right to basically call, that's not safe, I'm calling your mom. Again, not connecting to the child, way back, connecting on her phone, which seems to be the security system of the day. Supposedly, that's where you get safe. And that's where you stop things that are dangerous. And supposedly, it's like a 911 call or something, but it's going to a parent of a child that you're working with daily. You know, it's just weird. That is so twisted. It's so fear-based, infused. That's the adultism, that the adult has the right to do that, to call the shots, to end the discourse, to not have the conversation with the child and or others who are in the environment with the child, and not utilize that whole environment's social sphere as part of that child's learning experience. So it ends up being between the safety controller and the dangerous invoker, which is the child, right? And so you got this huge conflict struggle going on. And then the whole education frame, here we are in the outdoor wonderful forest school of aliveness and wildness, and you got this system going on, right? This discourse system, this rhetoric system, this power play system going on, and unequal power. So adults are susceptible with their unequal power, their capability to do anything to a child, and basically, you know, it's easy for them to wipe out a child. It's not easy for a child to wipe out an adult. So These are real things, folks, right? That are constructing. They don't necessarily have to be fear-based. That's my point. But that's where it comes. So you can't just blame the top down. We have to take charge for and our agency as actors, adults I'm speaking to now, and how we, teachers, parents, leaders, etc., how we carry out that discourse of fear. And that's through fearism. So we use our adult privilege, and then we use this oppression of fearism, and they come together, and it's a horrible combination, to be blunt, and it's incredibly destructive, and it's certainly destructive for the most part to the way we educate socialized children. So that's my morning kind of rant and some ideas to stir. That's really all they are. I'm not making great, big, beautiful arguments here or anything. I don't intend to, but I want to start the conversation on this idea of chasing the safe life will be a life of fearfulness. It will not be a life of fearlessness. So that's kind of my shtick. And so I just wanted to appreciate both the work of, for example, John Dewey, which I'm right now a great educational philosopher from the late 19th century into the 20th century, had a great influence in American progressive education, but also other parts of the world that spread. But he's actually got, some things I've found really saying, he writes great about fear and learning, actually. I'm learning stuff. But, he actually once in a while pulls out, a little rant, and I call it the holy rant. And there he is, he goes after that, fear is the enemy of all learning in society and all good democracy. And if without fearlessness, he says, I'm paraphrasing, in about 1922, teachers will not be able to do their job. And, so it's not teachers' fault, right? But he's aware that, we all perpetuate, that's the social system. The upper and the so-called lower, the workers, the people on the street, the parents. We can perpetuate the system, right? That's what I'm after today here. That fear is social, and how we use it through fearism and adultism combined is our responsibility. So there's Barbara Stengel, who's great, I think, great educational philosopher out of Vanderbilt University, the Peabody Educational College there, who is writing a lot about a Deweyan approach to understanding fear and learning, and she's really taking fear into educational research and thinking in depths that you rarely see. And I've checked it out for 30 plus years, and I'm very excited to be studying her work right now and analyzing it, and then having even some dialogue with her as she's opening up a channel in these years. So we both have a book on fear and education basically coming out. Mine will just be coming out sooner than hers. Hers will come out a few years down the road. So all of it, Barbara Stengel, Dewey, myself, just off the top, and there's others, but that's who I'm sort of circulating with right now. We're basically saying too much safety is probably not good education. Not the only ones to say that, as I say, in the outdoor and forest school programs that are now taking off, which is an exciting, interesting adventure. And I studied and watched that through the experiential outdoors and environmental education when I was in the late 70s. I was really very interested in that as I was getting my teacher degree and so on. But we're at a very different world and a very new place since then. But I'm curious what the theorizing on fear is in outdoor schools, in these forest schools and education, and how then that, what they're learning there, can perhaps come into the more mainstream curriculum of schools and or places where learning sites are that aren't schools, and even the unlearning, unschooling movements that are out there in the alternative world of education. There's some interesting things how we are going to have a better discourse on understanding the nature of fear and learning, this relationship of adultism and fearism, and how the nature, herself, itself, can become this great mediator. Thank you to Creator, nature, capital N, for perhaps mediating and teaching us some lessons so we don't get caught into what I saw happening just in the moment of walking by this, event, this encounter between an adult and a child in the forest just yesterday, fresh on my mind. Thanks for listening and tuning in to folks. I don't know about you, but I know where I'm going next.